What an honor, what a privilege to be able to address you on what I call the Valiant Rising, a call tomorrow, civic and national renewal. My dear brothers and sisters, fellow Valiants, patriots, believers in Nigeria, and builders of tomorrow, I welcome all of you to this historic gathering. This is not merely another conference. It's not another political meeting. It's not another gathering of people looking for positions or titles or applause. This gathering is different. And let me explain. We are gathered here because we believe Nigeria stands at one of the most defining crossroads in her history. And history occasionally creates moments where a people must decide whether they will continue complaining about the darkness or rise to become builders of light. I believe this is one of such moments. This is why we are here. Not for comfort, not for convenience, but for responsibility. Not because the journey ahead is going to be easy, but because the future ahead is too important to abandon. Today we begin not merely a movement, but a mission. Not merely an organization, but a culture. Not merely a structure, but a new leadership consciousness. And perhaps that is why destiny has brought all of us together in this room at this very point. And therefore, why the Valiant movement and why now? Nigeria's greatest crisis is not merely political. It's not merely economic. It's not merely structural. At its deepest level, Nigeria suffers from a crisis of leadership, values, civic consciousness, and moral courage. For decades, we have watched corruption normalized, institutions weakened, leadership commercialized, truth sacrificed, and citizens gradually lose faith and confidence in the responsibility of national transformation. Too many people now believe nothing can change. Too many citizens have emotionally checked out of this future. Too many young people have concluded that integrity does not pay. Too many leaders now pursue power without purpose, ambition without sacrifice, and influence without responsibility. And perhaps most painful of all, many good people have become silent. But a society does not die merely because bad people exist. A society dies when good people surrender responsibility. That is why the Valiant movement was born. The Valiant movement is a response to a national hunger for a different kind of leadership. Leadership built not merely on charisma, but on character. Not merely on influence, but on integrity. Not merely on power, but on purpose. We are here because Nigeria desperately needs a new generation of citizens and leaders who are courageous enough to call the truth, disciplined enough to live by values, and committed enough to build institutions stronger than personalities. That is why now matters, because history will not wait forever. Do we really even understand Nigeria's problems? Let's talk about that. One of our greatest national tragedies is that many people still misunderstand Nigeria's real problem. We spend enormous energy discussing symptoms while ignoring root causes. Let me paint two pictures. Just picture a woman called Amaka. Amaka is struggling, a struggling market woman who can barely feed properly. Her son has dropped out of school because she couldn't afford school fees. She's sick and cannot go to a proper hospital. Every day she complains about hardship, rising prices, bad government, insecurity, and suffering. And truly, her pain is real. But what if Amaka does not realize that she too has unknowingly participated in strengthening the very system she's complaining about? What if when she sold her vote for money, she helped legitimize bad leadership? What if when she defended lies because they benefited her tribe or religion, she weakened truth? What if When she remained silent in the face of corruption and injustice, she empowered evil. What if, when society normalized dishonesty, moral compromises, and selfishness, we collectively weakened the moral and spiritual foundations that sustain nations? You see, my dear friends, this is the difficult truth. A nation does not collapse only because leaders fail. A nation also collapses when citizens abandon responsibility. And until ordinary citizens understand their own role in national transformation, we may continue complaining about outcomes while reproducing the causes. Now let me paint another picture, and this cuts across Nigeria now. Picture Abdul, a Fulani man. Picture Tasso, a thief. Picture Benga, a Yoruba man, and also picture Ikenna, an Igbo man. All four men engaged in a heated argument. One says, my tribe is superior. Another says, no, we must produce the next president. Another blames one ethnic group for Nigeria's problems. Another responds with suspicion and bitterness. Hour after hour, year after year, generation after generation, they remain trapped in arguments built on fear, suspicion, mistrust, and historical grievances. And meanwhile, poverty continues, institutions weaken, corruption grows, insecurity spreads, and political elites continue benefiting from this division. Now imagine the day these four men suddenly realize something profound, that division has produced no meaningful victory for any of them. That for over 6 decades and after independence, suspicion has not built prosperity, hatred has not built institutions, bitterness has not built development, and tribal superiority has not solved national problems. Imagine the day they finally see one another, not as enemies, competitors, masters, or victims, but as equal stakeholders in a shared national destiny. Imagine the day they stop asking, who should dominate Nigeria, and start asking, what must we do together to fix Nigeria? That day changes everything. Because nations begin to rise the moment citizens realize that the solution is not in hatred, not in division, not in perpetual blame, not in all of this, but in truth, responsibility, justice, mutual respect, shared sacrifice, and courageous nation building. And that is exactly why we must rethink Nigeria beyond tribe, beyond religion, beyond manipulation, and beyond politics as usual. Let's talk about the tyranny of blame, because every day, everybody's blaming somebody else. Politicians blame citizens, citizens blame politicians, young people blame the elders, elders blame the young people, ethnic groups blame one another, religious groups blame one another, some blame colonialism, some blame military dictatorship, some blame constitution, some blame the international systems. And yes, many of these factors actually matter. But mature nations eventually stop asking only who caused this problem, and they start asking, what are we going to do about them? Responsibility is the highest form of power. The day a people stop blaming and start building, history changes for good. And we must be honest enough to admit that all of us are falling short of glory, including in elites, including professions, including intellectuals, including religious institutions and their leaders, including citizens of Nigeria, including elders, including even the diaspora. We have all fallen short, and we must accept responsibility. Transformation will remain impossible unless we fix this. Now let's talk about something else. I've been speaking for a long time now, the crisis of eldership. One of the deepest pains in my heart is what I describe as the crisis of eldership in our society. In many civilizations, elders are meant to be custodians of truth, defenders of values, protectors of justice, and moral stabilizers of society. But increasingly, many societies, including ours, mostly ours, are suffering because too many elders have become silent in the face of wrongdoing. Some have traded truth for access. Some have traded conviction for comfort. Some have chosen political convenience over moral responsibility. When elders stop defending truth, society becomes vulnerable. Because young people do not merely listen to what the elders say, they study what elders tolerate. If elders normalize corruption, young people will institutionalize it. If elders excuse dishonesty, the young people will weaponize it. If elders abandon courage, the young people will inherit fear. This is why we must rebuild not just leadership, but eldership. We need elders with moral authority again, elders who can speak truth without fear, elders who understand that eldership is stewardship, elders who are willing to sacrifice personal comfort for future generations. And we too, as emerging leaders, must prepare ourselves to become worthy elders someday. Because history will eventually ask all of us, what did you defend when truth was being attacked? And let me also address this. Even if the system broke us, so what? So let's be honest. Nigeria has experienced all kinds of painful distortions, colonial disruptions, military interruptions, structural injustice, institutional sabotage, elite capture, global exploitation. Yes, these things actually happened. Yes, systems sometimes knock us down. But so what? History does not reward perpetual victims. History rewards courageous builders. Many nations have passed through devastation and still rebuilt themselves. I can give you tons of examples. Some rose from war, some rose from genocide, some rose from dictatorship, some rose from poverty. And yet, they built through discipline, sacrifice, vision, and institutional courage. So while we may not be responsible for the beginning of our problems, we are responsible deeply for what happens next. And that responsibility now belongs to all of us alive, particularly the young ones. So do we now understand all of this? Let's go to the potential. What can happen when we fix our mind? Nigeria should naturally be one of the greatest nations on earth. When I read the Bible and I hear things like a land flowing with milk and honey, it is here. Indeed, it is here because there's no other country I've seen that possesses human capital, entrepreneurial capacity, natural, cultural, youth, intellectual capacity, everything, our spiritual vitality, and our strategic global positioning. What nation should naturally be flowing with more milk and honey than Nigeria? Mention one. And yet, potential alone means nothing. Potential without discipline becomes chaos. Potential without leadership becomes tragedy. Potential without values becomes destruction. This is the story of Nigeria. This is the future of Nigeria that we'll have to make sure it changes. It will be determined by the quality of leadership and citizenship that we produce. That's when things change. The real issues are actually moral, structural, and spiritual. I have often said that Nigeria's problems are moral, structural, and spiritual. Moral because truth, integrity, sacrifice, and accountability have weakened. Structural because institutions, incentives, governance systems, and power arrangements are often poorly designed or poorly managed. And also spiritual because a society is shaped by the values, conscience, and inner life of its people. When greed defeats conscience, when appetite defeats discipline, when fear defeats truth, when power loses moral restraint, society gradually decays from within. This is why sustainable development is spiritual before it becomes structural and economic. A nation cannot sustainably rise externally while collapsing internally. It's not possible. And this is why leadership must begin with self-mastery. Before we can transform Nigeria, we must first transform ourselves. Let me talk on restructuring of Nigeria. It's a common language we all use all the time. Let me say here something I consider very important to me personally. I believe Nigeria's potentials may remain largely unrealized unless we courageously confront the question of national restructuring. And when I say restructuring, let me define it clearly. I don't mean division. I don't mean hatred. I don't mean violence. I don't also mean destruction of Nigeria. No. I mean the honest redesign of systems, institutions, incentives, and governance structures so that this country can work more fairly, more efficiently, more sustainably for all its people. Every serious nation periodically reviews itself. Every healthy system eventually adjusts itself to changing realities. And Nigeria too must find courage to ask difficult but necessary questions. Number one, what kind of federation do we truly want? What kind of governance structures must serve our interest and in diversity? How do we build a nation where every region feels respected, productive, secure, and included? How do we reduce the dangers of over-centralization? How do we create structures that reward productivity instead of dependency? How do we strengthen local government and local governance and institutional trust? These are legitimate national questions. We should stop avoiding these questions. And they must not be treated as crimes. And let me also say this clearly. True restructuring cannot happen merely on paper. A country cannot sustainably restructure externally while remaining broken internally. And that is why I believe the first restructuring we must do must start from our human mind. We must restructure how we think, how we lead, how we speak, how we treat truth, how we understand citizenship, and how we understand responsibility. Because a corrupt mind will eventually corrupt even the best institution and constitution. A divided mentality will eventually weaken even the best political arrangements. And all the irresponsible citizenry will eventually transform to destruction of even the best defined institutions. So yes, I believe Nigeria requires serious structural conversations and reform. But I also believe that moral restructuring must accompany political restructuring. They must go hand in hand. And if there is any national cause around which the Valiant movement may one day raise its collective voice strongly, it will not be primarily be to impose candidates on Nigeria. It will not be anything else but to peacefully advocate for responsible nation-building, citizen-led reforms, justice, accountability, functional governance, unity through fairness, and sustainable peace. Because our mission is bigger than elections. Our mission is the future of Nigeria itself. And we believe that the future must be built not through violence, not through hatred, not through ethnic bitterness, but through courageous dialogue, responsible citizenship, and moral leadership, of course, including institutional reform and peace. So let me address this because I feel it's important to answer a few questions that may be going in your mind already. Some people may ask, why are you building structures across the country? Why are you organizing people community by community across the country? What exactly is the end goal? And in a country like ours, such questions are understandable. Some may fear that this is about personal political ambition or preparation for power or an attempt to build another political machine or even something confrontational or destabilizing. Let me say clearly and unambiguously, the Valiant movement is not a revolutionary army. We are not building a structure for violence, destabilization, or chaos. Nigeria already has too much instability, too much anger, too much division, and too much pain. We do not need any such attempt, any more destruction. We need more reconstruction. And let me also say this clearly. The purpose of this movement is not to help one man become president or governor. Because even if you produce one president or governor without transforming the culture beneath the system, the nation eventually returns to the same problems. The real battle is deeper than elections. It is a battle for values, civic consciousness, leadership culture, institutional thinking, and responsible citizenship. What we are building is not merely a political structure. We are building leadership capacity, grassroots citizenship, moral courage, community responsibility, civic education, accountability culture, and a new generation of disciplined nation builders, period. A nation does not change sustainably because one person rises. No, a nation changes sustainably when the consciousness of its people rises. That is our mission. What does it mean really to be a valiant? Let me ask a deeper question. What truly does it mean to be valiant? What level of courage truly makes a man or a woman valiant? Let me explain this simply and carefully. It starts from the heart. We must first be a good person, not pretending to be good, not performing goodness publicly while doing something else privately. Truly good. People must genuinely experience goodness through you. People, even those who disagree with you, should say, yes, we may disagree, but this is a good person. Because that is the condition of the heart. A valiant must learn humility, must learn empathy. A valiant must learn to place others into the equation and not live only by self. But let me also tell you something honestly. Goodness, while it is good, alone does not make you truly valiant. Because when pressure comes, when fear comes, when stakes become high and compromises rise and become more profitable, even a good person may buckle. This brings me to the mind. What occupies your mind? What ideas are shaping your thinking? What environment are you exposing yourself to? Because eventually, whatever dominates your mind begins to shape your character. So if your mind is still filled with bitterness, if your thinking is driven by hatred, if you are constantly about oppressing and suppressing others, manipulating others, humiliating others, or dominating others, then something is still wrong with you. A valiant must discipline the mind. A valiant must search for truth. A valiant must protect himself or herself from contamination by destructive tendencies and thinking. Now listen carefully. Even when your heart is good and your mind is disciplined, you are already ahead of most people in the world. I can guarantee you that. Perhaps, maybe you're among the top 10%. But even that still doesn't make you truly valiant. Then comes the will. Your actions must now align consistently with your convictions. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, not when people are watching, but even in private, even under pressure, consistently. What do you do when nobody is watching? What do you do when compromise becomes beneficial? What do you do when truth becomes dangerous? What do you do when defending justice becomes costly? And all of these challenges are in your face. This is where true courage begins, because many people admire truth, but only few are willing to suffer for truth. And this is why truly valiant people are rare. Not because goodness is impossible, not because alignment is difficult. Alignment between the heart, the mind, and the will, they are very key, necessary prerequisites. But let's even go deeper. Even this alignment alone is not enough for ultimate transformation, because if we rely truly on our own strength, eventually human weaknesses may still overcome us. And this is where the highest level of being valiant emerges. The alignment of the soul and spirit with the Almighty God. All of us gathered here believe there is a higher power above humanity. We may belong to different religions, denominations, and traditions, but we understand that man is not the highest authority. And when a person truly surrenders, not to a cult, not to money, not to ego, not to power, not to human worship, but to God, something extraordinary begins to happen. Fear gradually loses its hold over you, because once truth becomes more valuable than comfort, once purpose becomes greater than personal gain. Once eternity becomes greater than temporary rewards, you become difficult to buy, difficult to intimidate, difficult to corrupt. Even poverty no longer controls you. Even death itself no longer terrifies you. Death, where's your sting? Because your life is now anchored on something higher than material. This is when moral courage becomes real. This is when nation building becomes possible. This is when sacrifice becomes natural. This is when truth can truly be defended. And this is when a man or a woman becomes truly valiant. Not perfect, but aligned. Aligned in heart, aligned in mind, aligned in will, and aligned in spirit. And let nobody here become discouraged by this standard, because transformation is a journey. The important thing is just willingness. Once your heart genuinely desires truth, goodness, courage, and service, the God you serve will help you grow into the rest. This is the real mission of the Valiant movement. Not merely to build followers, but to help raise human beings whose inner lives become strong enough to help rebuild a nation. And here's my final charge. History is watching us. Future generations are watching us. Nigeria is watching us. This generation has a decision to make. Will we continue normalizing decline, or we will rise to rebuild? Will we continue surrendering responsibility, or will become builders of a new national culture? If Nigeria must rise, then a new kind of citizen must rise. If a new Nigeria must emerge, then a new Nigerian must emerge. Perhaps that is why we are gathered here today, to become that generation, to become those builders, to become those courageous citizens, to become valiant. So I charge all of you here today. Rise above fear, rise above selfishness, rise above bitterness, and rise above mediocrity, and rise above silence. Become voices of truth, become examples of integrity, become builders of communities, and become defenders of democracy. Become custodians of value. Carry this movement not merely as an organization, but as an identity. And may history one day say that when Nigeria stood at a dangerous crossroads, a group of courageous men and women rose with character, conviction, discipline, and purpose, and helped change the direction of a nation. Let us rise with courage. Let us build with character, and let us serve with conviction, and let us become valiant. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you here, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.